Oh, oh man, dude, I that was such a
my jaw just hung open there. I was like, oh.
I feel the tears coming back right now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a bonus episode today. We're going to call this episode 21 of the podcast. This is the Nii-San podcast, if you were confused, hosted by yours truly, of course, Josh Xell and Crim. And with me is...
Crim, also known as the Asian Avenger. How y'all doing? How you doing, Josh?
Doing good, doing good. I was so excited to talk about this episode. I was up all night looking up fan theories and all this stuff, and I'm so excited to finally talk about it because today we are going to talk specifically about Evangelion because the fourth and final rebuild movie just came out, and it's been 9 years, almost a full decade before the previous rebuild thing. So I guess... I know normally we do like a news segment, but I think this time around we're just gonna dive right into it and start talking about Evangelion. So for people who don't know what the heck we're talking about, which would be crazy because Evangelion is probably one of the most prominent anime pieces of all time, maybe one of the most influential series of all time too. And it came out in '95 originally by Gainax, which now is like split up between like Trigger and some other studios. But they created Evangelion, and it was just one of the wildest rides ever. You know, full original anime, and there's a lot of controversies / weirdness around the show in general because the show has some pretty crazy themes throughout. And then not to mention in its original series, it sort of ended with what a lot of people consider as like a missing budget or something, because famously episodes 25 and 26 are like hand drawn and like weirdly animated, and people are like, what the heck is going on? So there was that, and then they eventually made an end of Evangelion, which was made to be kind of like a redo of the original series, and this time with like full budget or whatever. However, that one actually had like a slightly different ending as well, and then people started to make fan theories about that. And then there was something called the Depth of Evangelion, but everyone chooses to ignore that. That one's like the unwanted stepchild of the series. And then we have the rebuilds. And the rebuilds were really interesting because they were apparently meant to be sort of like completely separate from the original series. And the first two movies follow very closely with what happens in the 95 original run of the series. And as time went on, they started to diverge very from the original. But they were like, at least in interviews, they said that it was meant to be also taken, like, if you have never seen the original series, you'd be fine just watching the rebuild. So that is Evangelion's long sort of history. And that's not really talking about how much impact it has and how much I feel like Evangelion. Sorry?
No, nothing.
and so anyways, like for me personally, this is such a personal joy of mine because I think Evangelion, when I grew up, it was one of the most formative anime that I had ever watched, and like I really really loved this show, and so I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Same. I mean, like this show, when it came out, I watched it as a kid, and I just liked it, obviously, just for the cool battling robots and like the angels and all that stuff. But yeah, like I didn't really see much of the bigger concepts that it was like touching on until I got older and watched it again. And so this will be a fun one. This will be a fun one.
And the show, when you first watch it, you'd be like, oh, okay, it's just like Gundam, whatever. Like people beat each other up in giant robots, but it's deeper than that, and that's what's so exciting. Okay, so if you don't know anything about the story of Evangelion, I guess we can do a quick synopsis. Essentially, we follow the story of Shinji, who is the main character, and he's basically a neglected child and his mom dies when he's young, and his dad is like the head of this like crazy organization called Nerve, and he and basically he's told to get into the robot, as people always say, and he's supposed to save the world, but Shinji just wants to be recognized by his peers. And so it's a funny story about how like this kid Shinji has to sort of grow up and understand why he wants to save the world, and through it he meets other neglected children who also pilot these giant robots, and they're trying to save the world from these angels who come down. And the angels are these like really weird robot things that come from I don't know what, and they have crazy powers. And so a lot of the early parts of Evangelion is about Shinji and his crew of desperately needing therapy children fighting off against these superpowered robots that want to end the world. So that's kind of like the general synopsis of the first half, I would say. I don't know. And so I guess let's talk about the Rebuild series, just spoiler free. Crim, what was your like initial thoughts? Like, how did you get into these movies? Because I think you and I were pretty similar in how we started watching these. Like I just binged all of them essentially.
I mean, yeah, same. I binged them as soon as the fourth one dropped, right? Because I wasn't going to start it until all of it was done. And thankfully I did, because imagine not like watching the third movie, the third Rebuild, and then having to wait like 11 to 12 years or something like that. Like, right? Like almost 10 years to finally get the conclusion. So for me, I didn't have to wait those 10 years. It was just like, cool, I could start the finale finally. But I had seen the original series. I'd seen all the movies and all that stuff before. So this was huge for me, because it was very hard fighting my urge to watch the movies as these were getting released. So, but it's here, and now I'm excited to talk about it, because like the movies, like just like getting started without any spoilers, like, yeah, like this is, everybody would always tell me about like how good it was. Like, oh man, check out the animation and all this other stuff. So there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah. Yeah, and so basically similar. I, watched all the stuff, and then I held off on watching it because, first of all, I was like, why would I watch it? Like, I guess I could watch it for updated animation, but as the series went on, I guess it went a little different direction. So, how do we want to do this? I guess we first talk about spoiler free, like, what did you think of the direction of the stuff, animation, like just general first impressions after watching it? Did you like it? Like, what did you think?
Wow. I'm not a fan of the 3D model usually, like the 3D animation and stuff like that. But, and they do use, they take the liberties in using that in here. But like the one thing here is in this movie and like in the rebuilds, they did a very good job. It blended very well. The animation was absolutely like drop dead gorgeous. I mean, when you have the reputation of being like the sci-fi anime, right? I guess you now have a budget. You don't got to worry about it like you did the old show, which did not age well. If you watch the original anime and you watch it now, it is very poorly animated. And when you look, it's not that bad to where it's like unbearable, but it's pretty bad. And so now the movies, the rebuilds, have made it so that, wow, this is gorgeous. And let's not even get to the final movie, right? That's just like starting at the first two movies, which I felt like was very much so the show. Give or take a few things, a few different narrative points, and a few other stuff, right? And so, like, yeah, but like, then you got into the animation of like the other movies, and like it got wild, and it was amazing. So just the animation, just like I can't believe how like they did the thing that I always had a problem with when it came to 3D animation was that the 3D felt weird with the 2D, right? But the blend and the way they chose to like make it all look in all the movies looked perfect between and when it wanted to look weird, because like I think people were upset with the way the TV show originally had ended because, well, yeah, the weird animations, right? But part of me still believes that some of that was intentional. And it's apparent today that it's intentional because the show has parts where it's very weirdly animated and it's on purpose. Because it's like, it's not like they don't have the budget for animation. Clearly, they've been flexing that muscle. So yeah, like this was really cool. And because of the budget and the unlimited budget, you got to see what was intentionally supposed to be weird. And I love that. I just thought it was so good. It was artistically sound. It was visually sound. Everything about it was like just. I think I texted you or I messaged you at the night as we were binging, and I was just like, I asked you, is it possible to be romantically intimate and involved with a way something is animated? Because I felt like I was in a relationship, a long-term committed relationship with this animation, because holy hell is it good.
Yeah, I loved every second of it. I mean, like, okay, so not just talking about the animation, like, I just felt like these movies were just a good standalone series, and like you said, like the first two movies are like a truncated version of the originals, and I just thought these were a good ride. Like, even if you have don't know anything about Evangelion, you could just jump in here and just enjoy the show. Like, the visuals are great, the story is great, like, and
Great
it ends
is an
in like a
for visuals.
Yeah. and like the story, it finishes and you're like, wow, okay, like it feels like a big finale. And I think what's so interesting, and we'll dive into it later, is like when you get into the details of the show, that's when things start to get kind of wild. And I think like Crim sort of alluded to his own fan theories about like the original and if it was intentional. This whole series has tons of fan theories where people are theorizing what the heck happened. And the reason for that is like, it's very clear to me Evangelion is very much like a art piece that is heavily influenced by the singular director in Hideaki Anno and like his mood and his thing. And so like his vision for things is like very, it feels very much like a single person's like feeling, I guess. And like, it feels like an art piece that evokes from one person. And because they do some really intentional weird things in the show, and you're like, huh, I guess they wanted it to look like that. Oh, okay. And so like, yeah, in any case, I think one of the wonderful things about this this whole series too is just the fact that like there are many ways to interpret this stuff, just like a true art piece does, you know, right?
Yeah.
And like I think that's one of the fun things about the show. And yeah, I came away with watching all the movies being like, oh my God. One is, yeah, I can't stress this enough. The visuals in the show are amazing. Like, I love the design language of everything. Like, obviously with the show titled Evangelion, you're going to find a lot of biblical references. A lot of things explode into crosses.
A lot of biblical references. Well, I mean, because I guess, do we get into the nitty? Because I mean, like, we're talking about like these angels, they kind of ascend from Adam, like a lot of Adam and Eve stuff. So like that's why there's they explode into crosses and all this stuff.
Yeah. And I felt like even though the last two movies deviate heavily from the original movie, they like added their own flair of like how to keep those sort of like biblical references in. And like, oh God.
Okay.
They do some wild stuff. And it's some of the sequences remind me of Doctor Strange in terms of like how wild the visuals get. Legitimately in the last movie, if anyone has epilepsy, I would actually be a little worried for you, because some of the flashing lights in the show are a little crazy, but they're awesome and beautiful. And so, yeah, I big recommend for anybody who has watched Evangelion, and also big recommendation for people who haven't, because I watched this with Kelly, and Kelly's my girlfriend, and she hasn't watched the originals, and I was kind of concerned because everywhere online people were like, oh, you have to watch the originals. But she went through it and she was like, oh my God, this was amazing. And it's cool that the originals exist, but like she enjoyed it just as is. So
yeah. I think that's the big thing, right? Like, and these movies will serve as a way for newer generations to also watch, and also it's not like it does the show or the whole franchise a disservice. And like when you hear things deviating from the original, usually there's a negative connotation to that, but like I do think that deviating here worked in its favor. I really. And I could see how it would upset some people, but like this was okay. We're gonna get into it. All right. So
yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're done with the spoilers. Spoiler free section. Now we're gonna talk some nitty gritty. Let's get into it. So if you haven't watched it, come back to this point in the future and we'll talk, because there's a lot. And maybe we start with just like the differences. Like, how did you feel between the original series and the rebuild movies?
I felt like the rebuild movies took everything that was important to me from the original series between it was like a nice culmination of the original TV show, the end of Evangelion, the movies, and all that stuff, right? You kind of got that, and it took the key parts, and then it just narratively made it more like tuned. And then it made like cut out a lot of the useless scenes that I just didn't care about, right? Like there was a lot of, I think we like, whether it was the school scenes or the random just idle chatter that like happens between Gendo sitting at his desk randomly, right? Like obviously Gendo at his desk is still like, you know, one of the iconic poses and all that stuff. Exactly, with the glasses glare, but they trimmed a lot of the stuff that I just felt wasn't needed. And they did it in a way where they still were able to capture like the interactions between all the like the pilots, right? Between Shinji, Asuka, Rei, you know, and everybody, literally the entire staff, right? And so I love this. I love this. This was exactly what we needed. Being between that and like just like the narrative was just more like honed in, and I love that. And I think they cut out a few of the angels between like the original series and now. I think immediately the first two movies go right up to about like the first movie is like the first 4 or 5 angels, I think. Yeah. And then, you know, like the angels get resolved relatively quick, right?
Yeah.
But that's because I think they're packing in a lot here. With even with a 2 hour, hour 40, like, you know, runtime, it just felt like they definitely were still cramming some stuff, right?
Yeah, it felt like a speed run any percent on the Angels.
Yeah, and that sounds bad, but let's be honest here. We never like the Angels were good, but they didn't need to be like these drawn out fights either, right? So like it was, the fights were resolved much quicker in the movies. And that's fine with me because that's not what I'm here for, surprisingly. And I loved that. I loved every part of that. And the first movie, I think, was almost like shot for shot the original run, right? The original run, like give or take some like a few scenes here and there. You got to introduce into a new child between like you know, Marie, I believe, or Mari, and she was really cool. You got to see like I actually really like the introduction of her as a character, because my biggest issue with this whole series as a whole was, yo, Shinji, seriously, get in the robot, punch the angel. Like Shinji this is where the Shinji complex, I think, stems from. Every anime character now, you have the Takamichis from Tokyo Revengers, you have, you know, the Eren Yeagers, and you have all of that, right? They all stem from this original crybaby. And of course, Shinji was tolerable because as a kid, and I watch it again and I get it, right? Like there's a lot of things to unpack in who Shinji is, right? It's easy to like just be like, oh, he sucks because he's the annoying whiny character, but the redo kind of does a little bit more to show you like the disconnect between, you know, him and Gendo and all that stuff. So like the disconnect between his family and how he's longing for that. And like I understand where, like, okay, why he's, you know, still a little bit of a crybaby and whiny, but still getting the damn robot.
I think like between the movies, I think there are probably going to be some people who complain that like there wasn't enough character build up between some of the characters in the beginning, because like in the original show, like Shinji gets a lot more time to whine at the screen. You get Asuka, who is far more aggressive and annoying in the original as well. Like you get a lot more character moments in the original, whereas like I think in the rebuild they sort of just give you the good gist. And it's funny because when most people watch Evangelion, they get that frustrated feeling like, Shinji, I don't care about your daddy problems. Go save the world. God damn it. You know, just save it. All right. Who cares about your daddy problems right now? The world's at stake. And I think a lot of people feel that way. But however, when you watch the rebuild movie, you just feel sorry for Shinji, you know,
which is, I think, the original intent, right? Like that's what you were supposed to originally feel.
Yeah, and so like it was interesting because like Kelly was like, oh, doesn't everyone hate Shinji? Like why do people hate it? Like this poor kid,
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like thrust into this situation and given no explanation from anybody. No one communicates with him. He's told to just save the world and do the thing. And yeah, you just feel bad for him. He's got so much on his shoulders, and like, yeah, I don't know. I felt legitimately bad for Shinji like throughout and that is very different because like, anyways, go ahead.
That's why this is great, right? Like they redid this, they got the point across, and they didn't make us like hate Shinji. They did, and like Asuka wasn't unbearable, right? Like she was like, okay, you're a little too tsundere here. You're like the tsundere, but like you need to chill here a little bit, right? And then like most importantly though, that hasn't changed though. There's one thing that has not changed. Why does nobody tell anybody anything for a team of scientists and a bunch of big thinkers? Why is nobody on the same page?
I mean, that's sort of the central theme of the whole show, TVH. Like,
right, but like, imagine if Gen was like, "Hey, I need to do this." Nope, we're gonna not tell you anything. We're gonna be super secretive about literally everything. But it's fine. That's like nitpicky for me. But like that's just like humorous. It's not like a bad thing. It doesn't take away from the show. I'm just always like, oh man, why don't you just tell everybody everything?
Yeah, I chalk it up to as being like the central theme of the show is that like people need to talk to each other. I mean, like, I think one of the core concepts throughout the entire show is what Shinji, I think it was Ritsuko who mentions it, and she's like, Shinji has the hedgehog's dilemma, where it's like the closer you get with someone, the more potential you have to hurt them, right? And like, I thought that the show in general makes a big point out of people holding hands and or people trying to keep each other away. Like I felt like one of the central themes of the show is about relationships and how they can hurt, but how they can also support. And it's like and I felt like those miscommunications happen because they're pretty realistic, I think, in a lot of ways. And like I think a lot of people are afraid of showing their true selves to people, and like people tend to be kind of ashamed of who they are, and like they don't want to be judged. And I felt like they did that point really poetically in the rebuild movies, and like I don't know.
No, that's true. Like they did a very good job with that in the rebuild. This is why I love the rebuild, right? Like they were able to just kind of like give you exactly what you needed though, and not have too many excess scenes. And like, one of those themes, the miscommunication is a huge part of it. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm just always like wondering, like, maybe because it's me and like how I would personally handle it. Like that's why the show is or these movies and everything about this franchise is so beautiful. Is because like how you watch it, and like me as a person, I would just talk about it, right? I would be very much let's be open about this, and especially when it's like maybe like third impact worthy, or like some issues that might need to be resolved before we end the world. But I like to pretty much move a little past that though. I do think that the show introducing Mari, I think was really cool, because if you look at all the characters, all of them have this weird reason. Like, Rey is just there to pilot because they needed a pilot, right? And I mean, then there's like the theories of why we have to have 14-year-old kids, right? Like pilot these things. But then you have Asuka, right? And then you have Shinji, who just doesn't want to pilot it. But then you have Mari, who actually openly loves piloting it and has fun. Like how we play video games is how she pilots an Ava unit, right? Like she's like, hell yeah, this is awesome. Let's get it done, and like she likes the smell of like the of like the fluids. She loves everything about the Ava, which is, by the way, butthole juice, according to science. Well, I mean, they found a way to replace them. Yeah. If you don't know, look up the Ava method. That's all you need to know. And so the thing here is, with that though, she loves everything around the Avas, which is refreshing, right? It's really refreshing to see that, because I like the original run. It was kind of like the sulk party, the sad fest, where nobody really wanted to do it. Like Asuka had her reasons, but it wasn't because she loved the Ava itself, right? Mari actually loves everything about an Ava, like head to toe, and I think that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, she provides a pretty unique thing to it because everybody else has pretty messed up reasons. Although, to be fair, Mary also has messed up reasons for piloting the Eva too, right? Like she was part of the original expedition with Shinji's mom and dad and Fuyutsuki, and
Which
so
means she's older than them.
she's much older than every. So that was one of the cool details I thought was that she, because of the curse of the Eva, where you don't age, she's actually the same as she has been from the expeditions and stuff like that, and so she got to keep it. One of the things
But
that
there's no Evas back then, right? Or 96?
Well,
right? She was all part of the original expedition, right?
Yeah, she was part of the original expedition for the second impact scientists. Like,
right.
That's she was part of that whole ordeal. Yeah.
Okay. So, and like, which is why, like, well, now that we're talking about spoilers and stuff like that, let's get how did you feel about Mari's ending?
Oh, I actually loved it.
Yeah?
Well, okay. Actually,
I guess we might be jumping here, so that's fine. It's fine.
Maybe I want to just talk about the explanation of the show because I think a lot of people might watch the show and like not understand everything that happened, right?
Yeah.
Like who the heck is Kaoru? What was Gendo up to? What is the Human Instrumentality Project? Who is Seal or Cell? Like what is all this stuff and like why did everything happen? And so I think one of the weird things about the rebuild is that because they left out some details, I think it's very hard for anybody to only watch the rebuild movies and get an understanding of the full picture. And it's very apparent with the ending of the show that like this was meant to be watched in its entirety.
Yep.
I think having watched now the rebuild movies, you can enjoy it just by its own, but to really understand what happens, you need to watch everything. And that's because like the whole thing is a time loop. And I think that's really interesting. The time loop theories that people were theorizing on is actually true. And so I guess let's talk a little bit about that. So essentially, for people who don't know what the heck is actually happening in Evangelion, because none of this lower stuff is ever explained to you. That's another thing I love about this whole thing too, is like you have to figure it out, which is that basically there are these primordial gods who sent down Adam and Lilith to the same planet of Earth, and their conversion was a mistake and causes the first impact, right? Mm-hmm. And the first impact wipes out a bunch of things. However, the surviving person from the first impact is Lilith, who is from the book of knowledge versus the book of life from Adam. And so beings from the book of life are omega powerful, but they don't have civilization. They don't have science. However, book of knowledge allows for civilization. That's where humans come from. Humans are from the thing. And we grew out to think. And so then human civilization forms. We discover Lilith, and we accidentally trigger the second impact. Boom. We accidentally wipe out like 90% of the world again. And from that moment, essentially a bunch of scientists discover what the heck is happening and why this stuff is happening, and then you find that they're the people who want to take advantage of what the thing is, because turns out
we always that makes sense, right? Human race, we always do.
We always want to be exploitative, capitalism. So the thing that the scientists discover is that if you combine Adam plus Lilith, you can actually transcend both parts and become essentially a god, right? Yeah. And so the SEAL's whole project here with Nerve is to create the Human Instrumentality Project, which is to combine Adam and Lilith. And what the Human Instrumentality Project actually is the ability to... So essentially in this world, the body and the soul are two separate pieces. Yep. And what keeps the soul inside the body is your AT field. AT field, which they make a big point of this force field thing, is like the shape of you. And essentially the Human Instrumentality Project gets rid of an AT field for everything that exists on the planet and turns you into an orange goo, which as we know it as as LCL, right?
Yeah.
And so the Human Instrumentality Project is meant for that to happen, for everybody to turn into this primordial orange goo, this Fanta or whatever you want to call it. And then Xell wants to take that and then ascend themselves into a being into the gods and take that spot as being like part of the gods and partake in the the book of life and knowledge. So the thing is that as they're doing these experiments, we keep Lilith in the basement of Ava, and all these angels are trying to get back Lilith. And the angels are from the book of they're from Adam. Yep. And that's why they're so powerful. That's why they have no thoughts or civilization, but they come down to try to do it. And Nerve is there to try to protect them until the moment is right to do everything. Now, God, this explanation is getting really long, but I hope people are following along with me because this is crazy. So the thing is that what Xell has gotten Gendo to run Nerve, but Gendo actually has his own plans. Gendo wants to use the Human Instrumentality Project to revive his wife. He wants to just be his wife. Turns out Gendo is actually just the ultra simp, and he just wants to be with his wife again because that's just who he wants to be, I guess. And so he's willing to sacrifice all of humanity to do it. That's actually consistent between old Evangelion and and so he sacrifices humanity, and that's what he wants to do. However, now this is the interesting thing: is the endings of each of the things, like the original series, the end of Evangelion, and now the rebuilds. All the endings are slightly different, and they come out with different conclusions. Like in the original series of Evangelion, the ending is that Shinji takes over the Human Instrumentality Project. Because when Gendo tries to revive his wife actually rejects him and says, this is not the way. And so then Shinji takes over, and Shinji in the original basically chooses to go with the Human Instrumentality Project because all he wants is the accolades of everybody else. And there's that famous scene where everyone's congratulating him. And he's just like, sweet, I've done it. Who cares about humanity? I got the thing I wanted. Boom. The end. In the end of Evangelion, he rejects the Instrumentality Project, and then he's left alone with Asuka in the thing, and
the beach scene or whatever.
Yeah, the beach scene in front of the Red Sea. And that's the ending where he chooses not to go with the Human Instrumentality Project, but he hasn't really accepted himself. He hasn't really he's trying to grow. Now in the final rebuild thing, it's not that he only just rejects the Human Instrumentality Project, but he goes around and tries to resolve everybody's character arc. We get an understanding of Gendo and where he's coming from. We get the understanding of Asuka, and he finally breaks the time loop. And I think this is one of the coolest things ever because I read on the forums of after the third movie came out, because the third movie is where it really diverted very greatly. It was like right a time skip. Yeah, and like all this stuff. And people were theorizing that, like, oh, what if this whole thing is a time loop and it is actually indeed related to the old series? Because everything up until that point, everyone was saying that, like, oh, Evangelion is just a remake, like, you don't have to watch the originals. But then people started to compare, like, the dialogues between Kaoru and Shinji, and, like, they realized that, oh my God, he says slightly different things across the different series, and they kind of confirm it in the final thing that, like, Kaoru has been going through these time loops over and over again. That's why you see that shot of, like, all the different coffins, and he comes back up, and so
that's why he says that line, right? Like, you have to find a time and a place where you're comfortable in, right? And like like he definitely has lines that hints at that.
And so I think it's so cool, and finally, Shinji accepts himself. He understands what he needed, what Gendo needed, what Asuka needed, what, all these. And he just goes through and, like, talks with everybody. He and, like, resolving their sort of personal thing, and we finally get the good ending, which is that everything gets rebuilt and everybody gets to go without Evangelion. And I think. Yeah, I think that's
to answer, like, to go in depth in that, like, Shinji goes back and makes a world that never had Evangelions, right? No Ava units, and I think that was for Rey's, right? Like for Rey and whatnot, and like it kind of just he just goes back and redoes the world, right? Like he kind of he essentially does that, and that is when like I thought that ending was very uplifting. So like that was a good ending.
Yeah, because at the end of it all, like we get the best version of everybody, and the Evangelions, the angels, they're clearly like this thing that like has impacted people very negatively, and so he sort of figures out a way for everyone to coexist and enjoy himself. And that
scene when all the headless Ava units, right, all the Ava units that had existed ever, they become souls and people coming back down to Earth.
Yeah.
So like I thought that was a powerful scene. That was a good scene. Like and then like the very ending scene here of like the new timeline where everybody is like just living a normal life. And like Rey, like you see Rey, you see, you know, Asuka, you see everyone, Kaoru, and like everybody's just like in normal attire at the train station.
Yeah.
And it's like in a grown up Shinji.
Yeah, Shinji's old.
Yeah, he's like our age now, like 20-ish, like late 20s, 30, right? And then Mari comes up from behind him and then talks to him, and it's like, yo, Mari and Shinji they're the couple.
Yeah.
And I think like, yeah, like that was a very happy ending. And like, by the way, this was brilliant because they went from animation to then it went to like live action.
Yeah.
And then you got to see just like this like drone kind of essentially fly up and show you Japan, right? And show you over a sunset. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful scene. And I thought everything leading up to that was perfect. Like just also like how Shinji, like this like Thrice Upon a Time did a very good job in giving everybody that resolution. And I loved Asuka's resolution.
Yeah.
Compared to the old ones. Like you know, the like you had the end of the Evangelion movies where it was like, arguably like, well, Shinji just forces Asuka to go with him on this like journey, right? Like to be with him, right? And all like I loved how in this movie Asuka got the ending and he's like, hey, I liked you back then too. And you know, like, but I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy for you. And because the guy for you is
Kensuke.
Yes, yeah.
I love Kenken and Asuka.
Yeah,
that
that was good, right? That was really good. I love that, and it gave you know like that was the ending that I didn't know I needed, and it was perfect. It was perfect for Asuka, and Rey's ending was beautiful, right? And then you had like. You got to see the closure between Shinji and Kaoru, and that's where the whole scene where we had mentioned like the caskets and all of that was beautiful. That was perfect. I just love that he went back and redid that, and most importantly, the Gendo resolution. The Gendo resolution on that train, the messages of that, what that like this like you know what that train could mean, sure, but to tie it all at the end, it was that Yui, you know, Gendo's wife. The reason why he never found her was because her soul was in Shinji the whole time. Yeah. And I love that. Like, holy hell. I you know, like normally I like there's some weird cheese or something with this stuff, like, but like they wrote it in a way where it was tasteful, it was brilliant, and like it was all like you know, Gendo being such a crap father in the end is why he never found Yui.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, that was the thing, was that like, you know, if you just take Gendo's arc, right, and you kind of dissect it a little bit, and he thought that he was doing his best by not being part of Shinji's life. He thought he was doing him a favor.
The trend of parents in this like the series, by the way.
Yeah, and the thing too is that like that's a common theme in all the Evangelions, is that Yui rejects Gendo because her wish was for him to be there for Shinji, which he doesn't do. He selfishly is doing things for himself and himself only, and his fear of being alone is the thing that really cascades him into where he ends up, and him realizing it at the end and getting off the metaphorical train was like such a beautiful moment, you know, where it was just like, oh, I'm such an idiot. She was with my son this whole time, and I couldn't see that. And so then he just lets go, and I love that movie, that part of the movie so much.
Like that conclusion, every ending, that train scene was beautiful, you know, like,
yeah.
And you got to, and like, that's not even to touch up on like the art, right? Like you got to see like it would be like this black and white sketch art to see some like childhood Gendo and see what it was like for him to grow up and how he'd always been alone, right? And it wasn't until Yui came into his life that he learned to like really know what it like to not be alone. He truly didn't know what it was like to be alone until he lost Yui, right?
Yeah.
And so all of that is why he becomes like the super simp and goes to the almost essentially ending the universe 9,000 times over for her. But yeah, like, and that scene on the train was moving. It was good. It was very good. It was I couldn't describe it other than the fact that, wow, that was deep in the feels and it gave me chills. I thought that was just really well done.
Because you mentioned a little bit just now with like the art style. It was funny because at the end with the fight scenes that go throughout like Shinji's thing, I remember being like, oh god, why did the CG get so bad? You know that one scene?
Well, it looked like funny enough, an N64 game. For some reason all the buildings just started to look like Lego blocks and like everything, and then Shinji gets hit onto the side, and then you realize like, oh, this whole thing is a stage play, right? Like in all the scenes that he gets hit through the walls, you realize, oh, there's something, this is all just a fabrication. And like, right. And I realized, oh, that was intentional. It was so funny because, like, in the moment, I was like, "Oh, what did they?" Oh God, did they rush? Is this why?
That's literally what went through my mind. Was like, "Oh no, did they actually like run out of budget again and like just had to?"
Again.
That ran through my mind. Yeah, and then I realized, oh, thank God, it was just intentional. And I loved the choice to at the end too, where they dissolve things into the animation sketches too. Yes. And like, I thought that whole thing was also beautiful because they made it a point to allude to all the moments of the previous stuff. Like you saw the sketchy work that they did in episodes 25, 26. They show you like they just reference everything back. They brought back the beach scene with him and Asuka on the shore of the Red Sea. And yeah, just having everything dissolve back to like just its bare bone lines in Shinji, and then Mary comes back in, and then everything starts to become beautifully animated again, and then the fact that it goes from there to transcending into just a real life shot, like that whole sequence was just such a cool artistic thing I think they did, and I thought that
it was brilliant.
It was so cool. Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
Like it was so like I couldn't put it on. Like I don't want to like it might be early, but I'm calling it. I'm gonna say it now. I think it was like legitimately an anime masterpiece. Like it was. It's unreal. Like it got everything. It not only did it hit every checkbox you could ask for, it was great storytelling wise, visually, all of that. But it even managed to squeeze in the fan service, right? Like we're talking about like not like booby fan service. I'm talking about like the fan service of like the end of Evangelion movie poster, right? If you remember that, it's the face lying down on the blood red. See, they managed to squeeze that in there. They got everything from the history of Eva in like. And did it tastefully.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely stunning. And as you had mentioned, like that one scene where every crashing wave, there'd be a little bit less art. And then it kind of comes back in full effect was amazing. And that was a huge thing that I wanted to talk about right there was that scene where it went 3D, it went N64. And I'm like, hold on. No, not again. And then it just slowly, like you got to see that like the two Ava units fight in the room where they first met, you know, like where Asuka and like, you know, Shinji would share food or, you know, with Misato, all of that, like everything. What I couldn't say just that everything felt so needed. Every scene there was moving. Every bit was tasteful. Every bit was like the detail was perfect.
I really felt like at the end of it all, Thrice Upon a Time felt like a full send off for the entirety of the series, not just like the ending for the movies, just like the entirety of everybody who had watched the originals, everyone who watched End of Evangelion. Like, I felt like this was truly the send off for the whole thing, and I thought that was so beautiful. And like,
I hope
for
so.
people who didn't watch the original stuff, they can still appreciate it because, you know, the scenes are still somewhat familiar. But for us who have watched everything, it was like, oh, this is the goodbye to us specifically, the people who had watched everything. And I think that's what's so crazy about the rebuild films, is that I do think that like having that additional context from the original series and stuff does amplify the effect, I think, for me anyways, with this movie.
Having seen like, I won't deny, right? Like, yeah, like you can enjoy it, right? A newcomer and not know anything and still love this franchise and be very appreciative just from watching movies. But then if you watch the shows and everything before, you really do see the detail that went into this and why it, you know what? I joked about it before, but the waiting for like the 10 years, if you're telling me that this is what 10 years work looks like, I'm very happy I waited, right?
Yeah.
Because this I would have rathered this than some like half-assed ending, some rushed ending that wasn't good. And I feel like they got to do everything creatively here.
I really felt like they nailed it, and I'm curious what the hiatus was about, because very famously Hideaki Anno goes through like bouts of depression, and he didn't know how to finish the show. And I felt like, I hope the guy's doing okay. Let's put it that way, because like, you know, I think people have theorized that like the way the show has ended really follows sort of his personal arc as a human being as well. And so like when he ended Evangelion the first time around, he was in a really shit spot and it was sort of portrayed in the anime. And I'm hoping that like now he's doing better, and that's why he was able to sort of end everything on such a good note, and like why he was finally able to. Because apparently, I don't know the truth in all of this, but like apparently it was so hard for him to finish the show that like he would distract himself by working in other things for a number of years, and was afraid to sort of like broach this last movie. And like, I'm so glad that he found out how to do it, because I'm really just ecstatic about where things ended. And like, I'm so excited at some point to do like a full rewatch of everything, because I think at this point Evangelion as an entirety feels like just a masterpiece, an art piece. You know, it really was a journey that has now lasted for 25 years. I mean,
most of our lives.
This is a life's journey here. And like, I don't know. I feel like this show, I grew up with it, and now to have it finally end like this, and like now we can go and be Crim, you and I, after having watched this, we can now go and be adults. We can start adulthood.
I finally can be an adult. Like I legit, after that ending, I felt that though. I was like, it was exactly, you know, the ending was so uplifting, and it finally felt like this just resolution. You know, like it truly felt like a resolution in anime, which very rarely happens. And I had this sense of like completeness, like being complete, and just I could do anything. And that's just how like good this ending was. And I could see why, you know, we all do the same things, right? Like we all try to distract ourselves and whatnot. And I can't imagine the pressures of being the person that created Evangelion, right? Like, and some of that has to play back in your head, right? Like you're like, dude, I made this like juggernaut of a franchise. How do I end this? Right? Like that's terrifying, right? And this is, so if it took him 10 years to do that, it was worth the wait. It was worth the wait.
This is tremendous.
I can't believe that it was in our timeline too. It was in our timeline. We got to see this end, right? And end the way that, you know, it felt like they wanted to end it.
Yeah.
And and also to like kind of slightly dial it back to the third movie, I was so caught off guard, like the ability to just go and shift gears entirely. I was so caught off guard by the third movie. I just was not ready for that whatsoever. Hold on. First off, we had a time skip. Okay, the first thing I remember seeing was like a time skip, and I started to go sweating a little bit. Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah.
But then they turned it into this like weird, like, sci-fi space like battle cruiser, right? Like show movie. And like I was like, okay, well, can the show work without Avas for a good chunk of it? And the third movie was, yeah, you don't even need the giant robots. like they did such a good job narratively, like storytelling wise, to just make me care about these characters. And like finding more about, Misato and what's been going on with her. You get to see, what life was like, why everyone's so upset and at Shinji. I mean, more so than usual. And like, yeah, like that third movie gave me what I wanted. And I was worried that, like, Rey essentially not being the same Rey, because she's a clone by now, and I was sad about that. But like the thing here is like, because after how much the first Rey, the main Rey that we knew and who she came to be, was gone. So there was still a death, right, in a way, and this new Rey is not her. So like I may or may not like Rey Ayanami. So, but the thing here is,
dude, Rey Stansby is suffering because oh my god, there's so much sadness there when she's like learning how to be a human being. She's like,
can we talk about that? Okay, I legit had a few tears in my eyes when she backs up and she's like, I just wanted to live here and I wanted to be around the boy I liked forever. And then
splat.
Oh man, dude, I that was such a
my jaw just hung open there. I was like,
I feel the tears coming back right now because like it was so fresh. Like legitimately, it's still like I feel the waterworks, right?
Yeah.
That was a beautiful scene. Like it was so moving. It was so powerful. And as a race simp or whatever, like that hit me so much because I knew it couldn't end well. Because they developed Rey a lot more, right? Like that was the arc. You saw her like, doing work and becoming a person again. And it's like, I can't deal with Rey dying again. And this time the way they killed, like this Rey death hit so much harder than every other Rey that like anything else for me. And like I don't know. I thought that scene was brilliant. That was such a moving scene for me. Oh, my heart. Yeah. Oh my God. And then seeing her splat was so
That's traumatic.
Right? And like I couldn't handle. I just can't deal, man. That was so good. God, this movie was so good, right? Like these rebuilds are amazing.
Yeah. I think we also have the benefits because we're talking about the third movie that like we got to go right into the fourth one because I can't imagine how people felt after the third one and being like, okay, where the heck are we? What the heck is happening? What? And then have to wait 10 years for the resolution. Like,
yeah.
My God, thank God we were so patient on that because I don't know if I could have handled that frustration, like.
I just kind of essentially, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, right? Just like, oh, nope, don't have to deal with the 10-year wait if I don't know the movies, right? So.
and like going back again even further is like in the second movie when they changed who was in the infected Evangelion too. And I was like.
That was.
What? And I was like. I don't understand. I still don't understand how Asuka was supposed to live there. I didn't really understand how that worked. Well, but like, I was like, where are they going to take this? Because normally in the regular one, Toji dies there. And I'm like, and that's what
Toji becomes a doctor in this one.
Yeah. When I saw Toji alive and well and living his best life as a doctor.
I was so happy with that. I was like, class rep. With the class rep. And I was like,
oh, let's go.
Yeah.
And it's, I was so happy for him, and I was happy for everything, and that was the thing that got me at the end too, was when the fourth impact was being threatened, and like everything was hitting against the walls of the anti-L units, and like you see them huddled together, and I was like, no, I just got to see them be happy, and they were threatening to take it all away again. Like, I swear that moment, again, as somebody who watched the originals and stuff, like made me feel so much worse in that moment, because like I was like, God, I just want them to feel good. And
like that. And in the second movie, like so to add on a little bit to that, so the Asuka living, how much weight do you think there is? Because like Asuka feels like she's a clone.
She 100% is a clone.
She is,
and
right?
So I think in actuality, well, so I'm actually kind of confused here, because like she is a clone, but I don't know if she's I don't think she's the clone.
Not like Yui and
the clone that was in the infected Ava is still the clone that exists at the end of the movie.
Or is she replaced?
I don't think so, because she has the infected Eva eye that's being held back by the anti-L unit inside her eye. Okay. And so a clone wouldn't have that, I don't think. And so I think she is the same one as the one there. Okay. And so what's weird about it is she does meet the original Asuka when she like she gets reached out to by the thing, and I think that's the OG Asuka reaching out to this Asuka of this series. I thought that was kind of a wicked, trippy, transcending series sort of thing. But
that was such another. I love that. And I love that. I thought, that's so good. Like everything from this series was so good. Like if you think about it, we watched probably 9 hours worth of movie time, right?
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was 9 hours. I was so off my seat, like, you know, just like out of my chair. I don't know why I decided I'd watch it before bed. I wasn't going to bed. I was standing up and I was like jumping up and down, and like it was absurdly cool. And like I can't help but smile ear to ear with a little bit of a tear in my eye right now because of how good, like legitimately, this ending was. And this was what I wanted. And once again, like the second movie did perfect things. Like for me, the first movie was good. It was the perfect way to get new people and the returning people. But it wasn't until we really saw them take the liberties with it in 2 and 3, and then especially 4, that it really hit. And like once again, just simple things like watching Rey learning like what a handshake means. Right? Like
the way she looks at the cats.
Yes, and then plays with the baby and all that stuff, and they're like, what is this human? Why is it so small? Is it malfunctioning? Like, and like when the way she looks at the cat under, and I'm like, oh my God. They did such a good buildup of they added so much depth to every character in this whole freaking franchise, and it was so good, man. This whole thing was so good. And then seeing in the third movie the new Ritsuko, and then like the way, like finding out why, you know, why Misato left, like, you know, like what happened to her, you know. We didn't really know what happened to her in KG, and then you finally find out why, and you find out she's carrying the burden as much as Shinji was, because it was her who kind of like that scene, by the way, when you like, that was when it was beautiful, when how you noticed that it was like about the soul there in the second movie, when Shinji goes to save Rey and pulls out the tape recorder, but you still see this bigger version of Rey hug him, and that's where it seems like he didn't rescue her, just her soul, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought the animation there was gorgeous. Everything there was perfect. Like, oh my God, mind-blowing good. But then, like that scene, like you'll remember that Misato feels responsible because, you know, she was there egging Shinji on, right? Yeah. And then you find out who Keiji and Misato's kid is. You don't find out too much about him, but you know that they have one, right? Yeah. And that was just like, that was beautiful. I love that. I feel like it's the minor details like that. You got to see that, and like, there's so many things that I just love about this all four of these movies together. Now that we've seen them side by side.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
I think this is a set of movies that I need to rewatch this again and like again re-experience, and because I think like having seen the ending, I want to see what other like Easter eggs that they've hidden across the whole thing, because like when you watch Evangelion for the first time and there are so many proper nouns of things that you have literally no idea what the heck they're talking about. Human Instrumentality Project, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the blah, 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 the Golgathon, blah, blah, blah. Like they just kind of, it's just like, wind noise. You're just like, I don't
I'm
whatever.
trying to keep as much of that information as I can. Okay.
And but now having seen it all, maybe I can go back and like re-understand what everyone was talking about and stuff. There's still things too that are still confusing to me. You know, like I still don't really understand Fuyutsuki and like what he really wants out of this. You know, the third impact that happens in the second movie too, like Shinji saves Rei's soul, but what was the end result of that besides wiping more people off the earth? And like I don't know. I guess like I'm kind of curious about some stuff still, and I wonder if rewatching it will give me a better idea.
100%, because there's no way that like I've already started rewatching the second movie. Right? Like
damn, you're ahead of me.
I'm on movie 2 again.
Yeah.
Just because they're like exactly that. Now that I'm not focused on, first off, like, you know, seeing what the differences are between original and new, because this is a whole new experience to me. And then all like the pronouns and everything like that. Like, oh, well, what are these? What are that? What are proper nouns? I mean, like all these things that are just being thrown at us. Now I can just enjoy the movie, right? And see what I pick up. And much like that, like I'm excited. And so far, just watching it again, even if I haven't noticed some things like in the first movie, because there's not really a lot to pick up there, I still love it. It's just such a good ride. And I think that there's one thing that I wanted to touch up too, like that the arc in the third movie where Shinji is just constantly like a husk of a human, pretty much like this just empty shell after feeling responsible. That was really good. I was worried I was gonna start getting pissed. I was like, oh, they're gonna give him a whole arc of this.
Every Shinji hater was just like, oh, here we go again.
Every Shinji hater was sweating. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was sweating a little bit. I'm like, this is gonna be bad, isn't it?
No. You just feel bad for him. Again, you just feel bad for him.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. I mean, you feel so bad for him. And it's like, that scene is still powerful where Asuka's just force feeding him. And he's just lying there motionless. And he's just like, whatever. Like, he's completely defeated. I felt like I was just sulking and like useless right there with him. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this... one of the really poetic moments for me was when he's sitting there next to the rations and he eventually decides to eat it. Mm-hmm. And I think like this is going to get real personal now, but back when I was far more depressed and like closer to being suicidal and stuff like that, like I can imagine exactly what was going through Shinji's mind there of like, I don't want to die necessarily because I feel like I should be able to live a good life, but I also kind of want to disappear because I'm so sick of everything that's happened around me. I have no control over my life and whatever. And so like he was like, I want to waste away and die, but I can't because there's a part of me that still wants to live, and he eats the rations. And like that part was like so like poetic in a way, and like at that moment I really felt like I understood Shinji in a way, and like I thought that moment was so beautiful. I was just like I guess I have to live. And so like because you know like if he truly wanted to die, he could have just killed himself, you know, like he could have just wasted away, he could have died. but there was a part of him that still wanted to live. And so I think that was, I thought that moment was really poetic for him to eventually give in and just eat the rations anyways.
I'm not gonna lie, when he started eating and crying at the same time, I was like, oh man, am I gonna start crying here? This is good. This is good. Like, and I don't know which the thing here is. Like, there's tons of points in this movie in that arc where I'm not sure what I'm crying from. Am I crying from how sad this part is, how powerful this is, or how good this is? So, I was just perpetually crying the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this was an emotional roller coaster for sure.
And it always ties back to like Ray coming and see him every day. Like, oh no, I can't. That scene. And then the train scene with Gendo. So yeah, like this overall, like I think now when we've kind of like gone into it, right? I hope they don't try to redo this.
Yeah.
I like you would have to. I won't say like, that it's not possible, because there is a timeline where somehow they're like, you know what, we're going to rebuild again and somehow make an even better version of this.
There's no way. I hope this is the end. I hope this is the end. I hope this is
right. It feels like the perfect love letter to everybody that's ever followed, and a good send off.
I hope so. I just hope no greedy person is like, hey, you want to be great? What if we did another Evangelion but live action with white people? Like,
Shinji is now Steve.
Yeah, Steve. And we've got instead of Asuka, it's Anna,
Amanda.
And, Ray is now Rachel.
Yeah. Gendo's Greg.
No. Oh my God. I hope that never happens. I hope they can let it be. And I don't know. I felt like this is the end, and this is where it should end. And I don't know. I just felt like through all of it, it's just like the ending message of just growing up and facing your emotions and knowing that other people, like, relationships are hard but important, and they can hurt you, but they can also build you. Like, I thought just like the central core concept of all of this was just so beautiful, and I just hope this is it. I just hope this is it.
Do you think we'll ever see a masterpiece like this again?
So I was thinking about like what other series out there could even remotely make me feel close to this.
Yeah.
I think the only one I can think of that makes me feel like it could maybe do that is One Piece. And One Piece also is just like an epic on a scale that is unimaginable. And like, to me, that's the only other piece of media that I've grown up with for so long and has been so consistently good and has like its own artistic merit. But honestly, currently as it is, Evangelion stands on its own as like what I think is maybe the most important media for an anime lover like me who grew up with it.
It's ascending. I think it's gone beyond just a single most important anime media. Yeah. I think it is single-handedly just one of the most important medias. Like it's just not even anime anymore. It's so good. It's just, this is essential to anybody that watches anything remotely at all, like, interesting. Like, you should watch this, whether you're into whatever.
Yeah.
And this, I'm so happy that I got to see this in like no joke, like in my lifetime. And not just the ending, but just to be a part of it, to grow up with it. I don't think we'll ever get something this good again. Like, I don't think there's anything that could capture, because like you had mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show, right? The director, okay, like Anno put so much of himself each time he had gone through these stories. You just can't replicate that. You can't, and you can't strike the gold that is this.
Yeah. I guess to wrap things up a little bit, like, I really don't know what else stands up like that, and it's cool because I know this is historical. Like, we are literally witnessing like something that like people are going to be talking about for years and years to come, and like I think Evangelion is yeah, I think it's numero uno in my heart right now.
Yeah, like
So,
it's always been up in my top 5, right?
yeah.
And even after being distanced from the franchise, having not seen the movies for a while, I felt like I was like slowly moving on the outskirts of the community. The original was still that good, right? And then now seeing this again, it's like, yeah, I don't have to ever watch this again. I'll just know that this is a masterpiece. I don't like this is just beyond it. It's ahead of its time.
It's just so good. So, okay, with that was our episode on Evangelion.
Yeah. What are the
I'm so speechless.
yeah, like closing thoughts.
How do we end this? Like I still have so much time left to sort of process everything and to like internalize more stuff. There's more things I'm excited to read about with people. Like it's almost like this episode might be even premature in the sense that like I'm so interested to see what other interpretations come out and like what other people thought of it. But like I know for a fact that we witnessed something truly historical, and I am so happy at the end of it. And like, yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much it.
What, like, because there's so many theories that always spin out of like these movies, even years and years and decades after their release. So I wouldn't be surprised if we returned to like analyzing this again. And I wouldn't be surprised if like you took a film class and in the future you're going to be forced to analyze these.
Yeah.
Because this is like really, really good. So like the theories that are like going to go spinning and spiraling out of this are going to be plenty. So definitely tweet at us, comments, all of that. Like we'd love to hear your theories, what you thought the movie, like how did you feel about the idea of like every single one of like the Evangelion like runs were kind of like tied to each other, like the time loop, different timeline things, whatever. I've read all sorts of theories here and there. Is this the original Asuka clone, or like, is this just another Asuka clone? Yeah. And like there's so many things going on and going around this. So and like I think the one thing here is God, that Kaworu line, the one where he talks about whether, like finding the right time and place, just be comfortable with who you are and where you are is something that just resonates with me and in my head and is still moving right now as we close out this podcast. So holy crap.
Yeah, I'm excited to rewatch everything and to feel all the feels again. And yeah,
and I guess
what a journey.
Mari, one last thing before we head out. Originally, I had Rei Ayanami as best girl of the show, and I'd like to formally announce that there's been some slight altercations. It is Rei Ayanami still at the top, just not clear cut, and now
and now Mary,
and now like Mari, and then I still like Asuka. I still like Asuka. I like Asuka. She's not just like this pain in my side. So like I now
no love for Misato.
Yeah, look, somebody's got to go, right? Or else everybody like somebody's got to go, or else like look, this show is like waifus in space. Okay, let's be honest here. But yeah. So Rei Ayanami, still best girl, just not clear cut number one. And then of course Asuka is like, and like Mari are close. They're close. They're right behind her. I still can't get that head popping scene out of my head. So we're gonna end this episode before I start crying.
All right. With that, guys, thank you guys so much for watching all that. Let us know again what your guys' thoughts of the movies or just the series overall was. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you guys very soon. We've got another episode coming out. So see you guys in a little bit.
Peace.
All right. Thanks for watching.